everyone, and welcome to the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world show made for the fans by a fan. I am your host, as always, Richard Tiemann, and this is the award-winning Fan Show. That's right, everyone's a fan of something, and we have got something for every fan. That's right, every fan. Real emphasis on every, especially tonight, those of you that are combat robotics enthusiasts. That's right, we say it that way because you guys love robot-on-robot action, you know, a real smash 'em, crash 'em, bash 'em style that we've seen this season on Battlebots. And we took a week off last week, but we are back. We are better than ever. I have another fantastic interview for you all, so let's go ahead. Let's recap what we've seen over the last not one, but two episodes of Battlebots in their fight card format. So episode 6, this was 2 weeks ago. This one was, I believe, called Buckers and Brawlers. It did not disappoint. We had Hypershock over Monsoon, which, hey, how about Will Bales right now? Am I right? 2019 Will Bales is the thing that is in right now. And then we had, let's see, Copperhead. That's right, formerly Poison Arrow. They got the win over Gruff. And then we saw Greg Gibson and Yeti over free shipping. Valkyrie knocked out Ragnarok. It did quick work of it. You got to wonder about the guys in Ragnarok. You know, are they going to be able to turn it around this season? The Desperado tournament is looming. But Valkyrie, good for Leanne Cushing and the crew, because that was a fight they very much needed. And then Scorpios over Sidewinder. How about that? We got to see Sidewinder finally. But Scorpios, you know, they've made some adjustments in the offseason, and it's really paid off. So congrats to that whole team. And then Hydra over Warhawk, which it pains me. Warhawk is the local hero that we've got, the only bot from Washington State. And I know Rob, he's a great guy. He's invited me over to Seattle a couple times for different events, and we couldn't link up. But I am deep down Team Warhawk because you got to, you know, rep the home pride. But, oh man, Hydra is a bot to watch, and I think that they are going to make big splashes, big waves moving forward this season and future seasons. And Bronco should be put on notice, and I believe that they are, because that was the main event of episode 6 2 weeks ago. Bronco versus Bite Force. How bad of a man is Paul Ventimiglia? Okay, can we just go ahead and put that out there right now? The guy is just he's a surgeon in that box, right? He is a tactician, one of the best to do it. And Bite Force, I don't know, they could be on the verge of another giant nut. He is just that good. And Team Bite Force is just that good. Let me just tell you from my experience being down there for the tapings and the wandering the pits, it's like you look around and it's kind of like teams and franchises in their locker rooms, right? The ones that there's kind of like they got a lot of decoration and whatever, like they're having fun. Bite Force is that one where there's not a tool out of place. Everything is properly labeled and in its proper home. I mean, if you want to win, if you want to be part of a winning team, a part of a winning pit, you want to be on Team Bite Force, and that was the general consensus while I was down there. I mean, Bite Force just they look, they sound, and they display the, you know, everything that a champion would. So good job to Bite Force. Going to be very interesting to see how the 16 seeds are determined. Of course, who wins the upcoming Desperado and where Bite Force lands in the landscape as far as the tournament. Like, who's going to be their toughest competition on the road to repeat. And that, of course, we will start to see after the Desperado tournament, after the break. I know, it's crazy. We're already at the midway point of the season. So this last episode, this one, probably, in my opinion, it was probably the fight card that had the fight of the year, and we will talk all about that one. And so first and foremost, we had Railgun Max, who's been doing fantastic over Shell Shock. Then we had SawBlaze. That's right, Jago over disappointed Al Kindle and Blacksmith. I really feel for him because Al Kindle is just such a recognizable person. His bot, everybody loves it. But, I mean, are the days of Blacksmith and that style of bot, are they a thing of the past now? That's the question I want to raise to you bot fans out there. Like, what should Al Kindle and Blacksmith do moving forward? Because this was a great fight. It was a fantastic fight. This fight card had 2 really, really good fights on it. I'd say probably 3 or 4, but that one would have stolen the show had it not been for the fight that I believe will be the fight of the year for Battlebots. And granted, I haven't seen all the fights. I've seen some, but not all. And it's hard because that fight was probably the best one of the card, and it just happened to be on the same card as what I think will end up being the fight of the year. So it's tough. That's tough for Jamison Go and Al Kindle. But hey, congrats again to Jamison Go. And then we had Lockjaw over Duck, another great fight. And then we got to see Tantrum with their new punching weapon, as they so eloquently called it, over Gemini. And Cobalt, man, that is a nasty bot. They took out Bombshell, quick work of it, one of the fastest knockouts I've seen. Death Roll and Quantum, a lot of people didn't know the way that this was going to go. It was a little bit back and forth, but Death Roll on a roll. Way to go, guys. The Kiwi fighters from down under in New Zealand, they are a bot to watch as well. So we have Hydra and Death Roll are your Fan Show official bots to watch for 2019. Seriously, these have yet to disappoint, and I think that they're going to be that one bot that nobody wants to fight, either on the road to the 16 or once the 16 is announced. And then finally, your main event, my pick for Fight of the Year, Tombstone and Rotator, upset of the year possibly, or one of the biggest upsets we've seen in the main event in a long time. Rotator gets the win over Tombstone. How did he do it? I don't know if it was sheer luck, if it was skill, or if we're starting to see the rise of some of these young guns. And, in fact, speaking of which, perfect segue, my guest tonight and I talk about that very thing. Jamison Go of SawBlaze joins me on the program. We talk about him, his season, changes from last year to this year, finally getting to debut that new big 35-pound saw blade that everybody's been talking about, and we finally saw it in action against Al Kindle's Blacksmith. Talk about how him and a few others like Andrea Galately and even Victor Soto, how those are all the young up-and-comers. Maddie Vasquez as well, who was on the show last week, or I guess the last BattleBot special. And I said, what's it like to be, one, amongst such a great company as far as the up-and-comers, but two, to kind of be that next wave, or to be considered in the next wave of great bot fighters. And he lets us know his feelings on that, looking forward to the rest of the season, and just everything that happened. 2019 BattleBots, looking back now on the few episodes that we've seen, and their record, 2-1. They are another bot that is going to be very hard to get past in this tournament of 16. So next week, we do have the Desperado tournament, or I guess I should say this week. So 2 sleeps away from the Desperado tournament. And don't forget, tonight on the Science Channel, you do get a bonus fight, Falcon versus Ribot. Ribot looking to get another win. How cool would that be? But yes, the Desperado tournament, 8 bots enter. 1 bot will leave victorious. You have to win 3 to be in, but it's not it's not a set seed. So it's not like you win this and you're automatically the number 8 seed. You just have punched your ticket to the tournament of 16 to possibly be crowned as the next BattleBots champion. And the Desperado matches, there's a sign-up sheet. There will be a committee. BattleBots Instagram and Facebook page have been posting all the updates. So that is this Friday, the mid-season finale before they take a short break. But hey, we'll worry about all that stuff next week, because we will have another great guest for you to sort of get us into the break, and then we'll start to get ready for the second half of the season. But until then, I invite you all to lend me your ears and give me your full undivided attention, if you haven't done so yet, for my fantastic conversation with the man behind SawBlaze, Jamison Go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me now is one of the, well, you may call him a rising star. I think he's a pretty well-established name in the BattleBots community, and he is an up-and-comer. He has really had a great season so far. Can't wait to see what the future holds as far as this season and beyond. He is the captain of SawBlaze, Jamison Go. Jamison, welcome back. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. And of course, you were on this most recent episode of BattleBots against Al Kindle's Blacksmith, which we'll talk about. But first, it's funny to have you on because as I'm watching this last episode play out, I'm thinking back to the ABC days, right? It seems like there's certain eras of BattleBots, Comedy Central era, ABC era, now Discovery and Science Channel era. And what I noticed is that during the ABC days, when this stuff was kind of being resurrected and taking up a newfound audience and just a new style, people were talking about Paul Ventimiglia, Ray Billings, Don Hudson, Al Kindle, who you just faced. And now, the more I watch and the more I do these interviews and talk amongst the BattleBots fans and community, the names I'm hearing are Andrea Galately, Maddie Vasquez, and, of course, Jamison Go. Like, those are the names that are on the tips of people's tongues. And this is, I think, technically your third season, but your second one that you're the most proud of as a team captain. So what has this journey been like, and how does it feel to be in such great company?
Well, it's it's a journey like most things. You start off small, it's pretty humble origins, and then you try every single year to do just better and better, and improve and improve. I don't think I'm quite as established as some of those big names. I mean, Ray Billings or say like Don Hudson, who's been in the sport for such a long time. He's a true legend for sure. It feels really great to be mentioned alongside them, but I think I've got a long way to go before I can even be considered any sort of legend in the sport.
Which, spoken like a true competitor, very modest, very humble, you kind of know your place as far as, you're one of the members of the next generation, so to speak. And I think that that's fantastic that there's going to be different waves of competitors that come through this sport, and some of you guys have done outstanding. I mean, I talked to Maddie Vasquez last time, and what he's been able to do with his family and Team Whiplash has been outstanding. Andrea Galately, the now Galately, she was Suarez, but it's sort of a family affair with her and Witch Doctor, and how awesome they've done. They were at the live event in Vegas, and just the way that their costumes and their theme and everything about them has really taken off. I love what you guys have been able to do for this sport. And so now let's talk about the new look SawBlaze of 2019. We got to see you debut the much anticipated new saw of SawBlaze, and if I recall right, you went from a 5-pound blade to a 35-pound blade. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's about 30 pounds of spinning mass. The blade itself is probably a little bit less, but we actually have the pulley, which is a considerably large piece of aluminum. And just to bring the weight up, we actually added an extra flywheel onto it to really give it some of that extra oomph.
And was there ever any talk where, I don't know, a happy medium is your next step, like maybe a 15 or a 20? Because to go from 5 to about 30, 35, that's quite the leap. What was the discussion process like for that?
Well, a lot of this concept is based off of things that I've built in kind of like the amateur league, so to speak. People I'm sure that have mentioned before, there's, aside from the BattleBots TV show, 250 pounds, there are fighting robot competitions all across the globe in weight classes which are smaller, and it's a great proving ground. That's what I've been doing for most of my early career, and also a little bit of a test bed. You actually see a lot of the folks on BattleBots will be competing or judging or helping out in some capacity at these events as well. So I had a 30-pound robot that I've been running for a while with this same concept, and SawBlaze has actually been about the same design. So this season was about integrating that weapon type into the robot itself. And we kind of kept everything about proportional to that. Now everything's not going to scale accurately, but it was a starting point. So that's kind of what we aimed for. And just so we had thrown out a base value, want to try and target about 30 pounds. Because the weapon is not going to be able to spin as fast as it would in the lower weight classes. So you have to make it up with mass, with momentum. Yeah. So that's kind of where we drew that initial mark as an initial target. And this is really our first chance to use it.
Well, I gotta say, I think it's brilliant what you guys have been able to do with that bot. It's staying true to its origins design, original design, your origins. There we go. And then, of course, just making that bigger and better and really more badass, which last season you and I talked, I said, I think we have our new villain in Battlebots. It might be Jamison Go, which would be right up there with Ray Billings. But this year, you've just been a badass, really. There's no, like, villain or hero persona about you. It's just you go out there, you want to have the best fight that you can, as long as you get the win. And for the most part, you've done that. Now, you may not think that you're deserving of being mentioned in certain company just yet, but let me remind you, though, that so far this season, I think that the people, the powers that be with BattleBots would disagree with you. Your first fight, Episode 1, Rotator, Victor Soto, who we know is kind of that next generational bot fighter like yourself and Andrea Galately and Maddie Vasquez. But then right after that, your next fight, Tombstone. And then this most recent one, Al Kindle and Blacksmith. So they, I think, threw you to the wolves with every intention that, we're going to throw you in the deep end and we hope that you can swim. And I think they fully believe that you can swim, and you've done that very, very well. So looking back on how the season has played out, coming up on the now Desperado tournament, which is about the midway point of the season, how impressed have you been with yourself, the fights, the matches that you've had, just overall the feeling going back a year ago and to now the present?
Yeah, it's been it feels really good, actually. We had a lot of uncertainty. This was actually an extremely difficult build season for us versus the 2018 season, which was minimal in terms of the amount of modification we did to our Season 2 version of SawBlaze. Season 4 version was a completely new rebuild. It was really expensive, and we had a very limited time schedule, and I'm sure many, many other teams have talked about. So to see how it performed so far it's a huge sigh of relief. We made so many changes. Everything's almost completely new. There's not a scrap that's the same from the 2019 to 2018 robot. And so when it performs well, it's a sigh of relief. All the hard work, the calculations, the design proved itself, and nothing weird happened. There are a few moments which have been slightly disappointing, like our Tombstone loss. The beginning of the loss was when we lost a connector actually unplugged, just because Tombstone gave us a good smack. It spun the robot around so much that G-Forces unplugged a connector, and that prevented us from keeping up the chase. And it was kind of like a cascading failure. Then he started taking parts off, yada, yada. If we didn't lose that, we would have been more aggressive, but it was a new part. We had it wired up in a whole different way, new things, the typical failures that you might experience when you bring something completely new. So that aspect was a little bit disappointing, and maybe critical in the robot, of course, because I can do that. And the new weapon was really hard to control, as you've seen in the most recent fight. So, it's happy things, sad things, frustrating things, but it's all part of the process.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the process is probably about like 85% of the fun, and then, that difference is going to be if you win or not. And I think for you guys, obviously, you hope for a win. But let's talk about it then. The fight with Al Kindle and Blacksmith, split decision, went your way. But I feel like it was almost, at least in my eyes as a fan, and you may feel differently, and that's perfectly fine, but it was kind of a passing of the torch, pun intended, because you guys have stuck true to your hearts as far as the design goes. Because I was talking to Matt Spurk of Kraken, and he's like, Al could easily replace the hammer with a vertical spinner and go out there and probably kick some ass and get a few more wins. But, that's not Blacksmith. That's not who Al Kindle is. And for you guys could probably swap the arm for just a, pretty much stationary saw or a spinner, whatever route you want to go, and have a similar effect, but that's not the SawBlaze that we know. And so here you guys are going against a seasoned veteran who is stuck true to himself and what he wants to do out there and how he wants to perform, and you guys get a split decision win over him after debuting the weapon that everybody has been talking about. What went through your mind watching that episode again and thinking about, yourself in the world of BattleBots now and what the future holds for you?
Well, I guess I gotta say to start off is, I am pretty proud of my team and myself, and actually Al as well, Al and his team. It is very tempting to switch over to a spinner. The successful robots thus far have been spinners, and it definitely, in terms of number of actuators and complicated bits, it's attractive. It's on our full-time job, so we've got definitely put in a lot of work to make all these more complicated designs function. And so I'm proud of all the teams that go out there and they stick with the design, which was a little bit, unorthodox or something a little bit strange. I'm really proud of those guys, and I think that's really what's going to keep the show alive. You got to have some of that diversity, and you might just be surprised that maybe they exploit a weakness, they strike in a way that's unexpected, and we might actually see some big upsets. I actually really love Rotator for that reason. Whoever thought about putting a low spinner and a high spinner on the same robot at the same time? And even this season, he's turned up to 11 with all the levels of modularity. It's a really smart design, and I just love Rotator so much.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys do so well out there and obviously have a design that you're not only excited about, but that works. And that's what I think is great about the next generation of great competitors, the names that I mentioned before. And yeah, Victor Soto is right up in there with them. So one thing I wanted to point out that I noticed during your guys' match, so I cover a lot of indoor and arena football, and there's a saying that the wall is undefeated because instead of a field with sidelines and an out of bounds, there's padded walls that these players can run into. And we've seen a lot of players go up over or get racked up on them or run right into them, and it takes them a minute or two to come up. And so the saying is the wall is undefeated. I feel like the similar saying, the battle box is undefeated, could be incorporated, and I don't know how you would score it, but we've seen many a bot go down because of their, I don't know if it's they weren't paying attention to their surroundings or something happened that they didn't see coming, and that, of course, is certain things in the battle box. We saw last year, Lockjaw got hung up in one of the kill saws, and that was, just critical to that matchup and, of course, his record for the season. He had to go into the Desperado tournament. We've seen a few bots that get flipped out of the battle box, and it's a knockout for them. And we've seen Cobalt get hung up on the floor. We almost saw you guys get hung up on the screws. So as somebody who's now a seasoned fighter in BattleBots, how much does the arena and your surroundings play into maybe strategy or just having another set of eyes in that little box area where your team is, scouting out for places that could possibly, interfere more so than your opponent?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that saying. I mean, the arena, it never really loses, never ever. The wall especially, I think, can definitely take a lot of abuse. But this season, more than ever, like you said, the floor is actually a really big factor. And so, just beyond the match itself, there's all the pre-preparation for the robot configuration, XYZ, what you would do to modify it. But part of that is actually being aware of your surroundings, and that includes, for my team, we survey the floor before the match. For our robot, and ground clearance is important. And we've had our own encounters with running into cuts in the floor in the last season as well. So that's part of our routine. We actually try to identify the spots, and actually a guy with a hammer will come over and flatten things out if something's sticking up. Can't fill in holes, obviously. But, you do what you can to try and reduce how much the external field kind of plays into your robot operation. The screws aspect, that was unexpected for sure. And I think we got a little bit lucky. I think Blacksmith might have pushed us a little bit. The screws restarted again. And those, of course, spit us out in that direction. So a combination of those two things, I would think we got pretty lucky that the screws let us go. But the arena definitely never loses.
All right, so it's one saying that can translate over to your world as well. That's fun. It may not be as fun for the people that have found themselves on the wrong end of the arena and the battle box. But in your mind, doing this, for as many seasons as you have, and 3 as a team captain, what's harder to prepare for? Is it opponent with a design that really just doesn't, I guess, mesh well with your design, or is it the unexpected variables within the box once the fight, once the light goes green?
There's a certain number of things that you as a team, you can kind of prepare for ahead of time. Some of that is making sure that your robot generally is going to function. It's reliable. That's probably what you have the most control over. And then maybe a little bit on the configuration, what kind of front we put on. In this case, we have more, so we can actually handle a wider variety of opponents this year. And we actually have 2 weapons, so that's great. The thing that's a little bit more of a variable is how your opponent will compensate for you, and generally what that design is, because it's like a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors matchup. There's some designs which 9 out of 10 will do better against another one. So it's like rock, paper, scissors with probability and skill. A vertical spinner is something that we typically don't like fighting, just because when they hit you, it's going to mess up our main advantage and they disorient you at the same time. So generally, I don't like fighting those. But you can do your best efforts to prepare for it, and you have to outmaneuver them so that they can't get those really critical hits on you.
Yeah. And to see you guys in the pits making the strategic adjustments, I was curious if you know offhand if there is any sort of maybe an official rule or just sort of a mutual respect amongst builders and fighters that you guys have to disclose what variation or what version of what weapon that you're going out into that fight with, because it's been brought up a few times, but I'm personally unclear onto whether or not you guys have to tell your opponent, because you guys have a few different blades. I know that when we saw Warhead last year, there was a few different modifications. Obviously, Ray Billings and Tombstone have a few different size blades that they can put on, and there's a few other bots that can either go with this size weapon, or maybe they'll go with this wedge or no wedge at all. So when you guys know who your next opponent is, do they have to tell you what configuration they're going with?
Currently, there's no rule that says anyone has to disclose anything to, say, like a mutual or some entity, not disinterested, a mutual entity of some sort, like a producer. There's no rule that says you have to do that, and I'm not sure if there's ever going to be one. It kind of created some really frustrating situations for some other teams. I know that there's Endgame and Ribot, actually. We're having a hard time trying to figure out which module and which kind of front-end attachments they were going to pick. They could counter each other. So part of that might actually be the design of the robot is who can do it faster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the robot that can switch out faster probably has an advantage on that, because eventually, the people are going to tell you to line up. You have to go do your final checks and everything. And sometimes those teams are holding out as long as possible. It's that last second where they're going to do that 5-minute switch. Your seasoned, practiced pit crew, right? Because they can do that, and then get that slight leg up on their opponent. And some guys that even actually they cover in a tarp. So if you're not paying attention, you might get an additional surprise.
That's very true. Wow, so there's no rule that says you have to disclose. Wow, that's almost like a mind game in itself. That's a very exciting little snippet to know about the world of BattleBots, especially back in the pit area. So for you, you've had some tough opponents so far this season. 3 fights on the season. You are 2-1, so looking in good shape. And now we're going to have the Desperado tournament, which will be announced later this week. But for you, We saw a lot of bots have really tough schedules last year, and although they were great bots, maybe they weren't the ones that came out with the win more often than not. But you had to wonder, maybe if they had some easier fights in there, it would have helped balance things out. You guys have a winning record right now with one of the tougher schedules, but are you at the point right now where your next fight you'd like to maybe be against a not Tombstone or a not Al Kindle and Blacksmith, or are you the kind of guy where going in as your third season as a captain that you welcome all challenges and most importantly all comers?
Yeah, I think it's an important part of BattleBots is to you never really decline a challenge. Like whomever they assign us to fight next, like we're going to fight them unless some powers that be decide they want to swap it. But we haven't really had a situation where we requested a change. Like Tombstone, when we first heard about it, we were in the middle of testing, actually trying to get the spin-up time fixed after the rotator match. And first it was like oh, damn it, we're not ready for this sort of deal. But there was a few moments later, we're like, you know what? I think, no, this is going to be awesome. I think we can actually take him out. And so it grew from, apprehension to excitement. And I think that my team feels the same way. We're ready to fight anyone, whomever. And even at this point in time, with a winning record 2-1, we'll still fight whomever they match us against. Of course, we have our preferences. We'd like to have 3-1 as our final record. Yep. So maybe crossing our fingers for a good matchup in our favor. But you never know who they might give you. And, again, with this fight card format, even if you do lose, if you have a spectacular fight, it's almost worth more than fighting an opponent which kind of dies on the first tap.
Yeah, it's very much a case of, you are not what your record is, because there's a number of variables that go into these fights. And if you have a great performance and if you're against, 3 or 4 tough bots, even if you're 0-3, 0-4, it's... there can be other things that weigh into the decision-making process, which we will start to see now as we get closer to a lot of your guys' fourth and final fight. We have the Desperado tournament coming up this week, and then there's going to be a little bit of a break, which, I know that you guys aren't down there doing this right now, but obviously probably a nice break just altogether for you guys that are watching this and making appearances on shows like this one. But hey, Jamison, I got to say, it's always a pleasure to watch you on the, BattleBots and in there. Going toe-to-toe with some of the best. You guys are a very exciting team, and your bot is hands down one of the best out there right now. So I wish you and the team nothing but the best, and thank you so much for taking the time to come back on the show and talk some robot fighting.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me once again.
Absolutely. He is Jamison Go, one of the rising stars of BattleBots and captain of SawBlaze. You take care and have a good rest of your night, man. And one more big thank you to Jamison Go of SawBlaze. Always a pleasure to catch up with him. Clearly having a phenomenal season at 2-1, hoping for 3-1, and we will see the Desperado tournament. Who is desperate that they would enter the Desperado tournament in hopes of punching their ticket to the 16 early? You got to survive 3 consecutive fights. We saw Don Hudson do it last year with Lockjaw. Of course, it was a big surprise to see a name like that in a Desperado tournament. But then again, Don Hudson, he is not to be, messed with, because he's been around the block a few times. He has done this before. It ain't his first rodeo. He's the man with more giant nuts than there are seasons of BattleBots. And he said, I can win 3 fights in a row. And he went and he did it, and he punched his ticket and, had a great run in the tournament. But, of course, getting in is half the battle. The other half is, of course, getting after those rounds. So can your bot survive the 3 rounds of the Desperado tournament if you have any remaining fights left for your regular season, and then the 3 rounds of the 16? Because that is ultimately what's being tested here. So the deck is stacked a little against those that decide to do the Desperado. But for those that have started off not so well, I completely understand it. So best of luck to those of you that are entering the Desperado tournament this Friday on Discovery at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Don't forget, if you missed any of this episode, which you shouldn't have because it was all pre-recorded and posted now for your listening pleasure, but any previous BattleBots specials that you want to listen to and enjoy, or if you want to be in the loop and make sure you get a notification for our next all-new BattleBot special, make sure that you are subscribed either via iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. Just look up The F.A.N. Show and you will see it there. One of the top ones for that name should be the only one with the F.A.N. show. And of course, we're broadcasting and recording through Spreaker.com. So there are 5 ways to enjoy the F.A.N. Show. You can follow us on Twitter, either at F.A.N. Show Official, that's the flagship account, or F.A.N. Show _robotic, not robotics, but robotic. And that's for all your latest BattleBot updates. Give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/F.A.N. Show Official. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, best of luck to you and yours. Remember, it's not official unless it's F.A.N. Show Official, and we are officially out of here. You guys have a good rest of your night. We'll see you next week.
Do you remember the time that Mark Sanchez ran into his one player's butt? That was funny sports.
Thank you for having me on the show, man. I love the F.A.N. Show.